I'm John. I'm alcoholic.
I'm Tom. I'm an alcoholic.
Guys, thank you for sitting down with me once again for another week talking about an important subject, an important topic, and it's opening up and sharing your story, in your journey, because it applies to all of us. And we were saying that just off camera just now, that these discussions that we're having. And I was telling you guys, and you guys at home will probably agree, that I'm nodding a lot because I'm listening to what you guys are saying, and I'm applying these to what's going on, like what I'm dealing with in my own life, my struggles that I'm dealing with in my own life, and that's what I'm hoping that all of you at home are being able to apply some of these learnings from people who have lived this experience as well. So this week, the topic is, we're calling it pulling weeds. It's ultimately going to get us to accepting and receiving grace. And on the AA on 12 steps, we're going to focus on steps 6 and 7. And step 6 is entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. And step 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. So, Tom, I'll start with you. These 2 steps, this is the first couple of steps as you get into the accountability phase that we talked about last week. How important are these steps, and what did you personally go through with these 2 steps?
For me, this is where the rubber met the road. As I said, for so many years, I functioned as an atheist. And when you are functioning that way, you have to be in control of everything that goes on around you. That's the way you feel. Step 6 is about giving up that control. I've shared a story before that the story with step 6 is, you get in the car, and then you get in the back seat, and in the front seat, God's the driver. That's what this step 6 is about, is letting God become the driver in your life. If you're a control freak, that's one of the most difficult
That was my next
things
question.
that
How
you
hard
could
is
ever
that?
have to do. Step 7, humbly, to me, is honestly. We talked about this in the break too. It's absolute honesty. And it's honesty not only in admitting our wrongs, but it's honesty in our relationship with God. It's a total willingness to be forgiven.
John, what Tom just said, the analogy of that you are now a backseat driver and putting God, or you're now a passenger and God is in the driver's seat. How hard is that? I mean, Tom said, as a control freak, it's really difficult. How hard is that in this process, which we hear this a lot, to let God take control. We hear that a lot in church and in faith. But how hard is it in this process that you're going through to put God in control?
I think over the years, I micromanaged my life very, very carefully. Very controlling. You couldn't slip up because you had things going on in the background. There was drinking going on, and you had to be very, very careful. And relinquishing that control, just letting say, this isn't, don't let my will be in control anymore, because my will's not working. You keep doing the same thing over and over and it doesn't work. Why do you keep doing it over and over? But, that's what alcoholism is. It just, you keep going round and round and round. I'm not going to do this again.
Yeah.
Relinquishing that control to God it's a huge step. It's very difficult. It was very tough for me. I mean, I had no concept of grace. I didn't understand it. And it took, it took a lot of, I guess, a lot of hours and a lot of scripture and a lot of going to meetings and for me to find that path.
Tom, on that process, on that same theme right there, giving up control and giving God the keys to the car, right, and putting Him in the driver's seat. Like you said, it's really hard to do. So, specifically, what exactly did you do? Like, what exactly did you do for all of us who listen to this and hear about, all right, time to put God in control? What did you do?
Well, it's not something you say, okay, God, you're in control.
Right.
It is part of that process. It's something I struggle with today. I had a priest friend who said, I wake up every morning and turn my will and my life over to the care of God, and by the time my feet hit the floor, I'm taking it back. Yeah. That's the life of giving God control. I think it's something that happens over and over and over again. And as our faith grows and our trust in God grows, we begin to say, okay, I'm glad that He's in control. I'm glad that He's driving the car. And at that point, we make that shift.
So Tom mentioned about how giving control up to God is not just, I asked him, what did you do? And he said, it's not something that you just do. It's a process, right? Was that the same thing for you, that it's not just something that you just said, hey, I'm giving God, you're in control. It's something that you've had to work on. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is a process.
What are some of the things that you've had to do during that process?
I guess it's still an ongoing process every day. Last year I came in for one of the services, and we picked a word that we were going to focus on for the year. And we were going to, that was going to be the word. Yep. Well, I did that again this year on my own, just personally, because we didn't have a chance to do that again. This year, my word was acceptance. Accepting the things that go on around me is part of letting God have the will. Accepting the way people act around me and the situations that happen. It's not that it's going to happen, it's how I'm going to react to it. I've got this little mantra right now that I'm using. It's like, my joy is free, you're welcome to it, but you can't steal it. I'm gonna try to have joy in my life at all times, and everybody's welcome to it, but you can't steal it, you can have it freely. And I guess that's kind of the way I want to kind of play this year. I want to look at it like that.
Okay. Tom, you mentioned this earlier, and John, you mentioned this during the break before we got started. I want to focus on the term honesty a little bit with this pulling weeds and with these two steps. The step 5 was admitting to God and to others and yourselves, and that's the start of the accountability. How important is going through this process, and also going through your walk with God at the same time? How important is being honest with yourself and being honest with others? How important is that?
Vital. Most of us, particularly as addicts and alcoholics, live a lie. And that lie starts with, we don't have a problem with alcohol. Until we become honest with that one, it's really almost impossible to become honest with other things. We build our lives upon lies. I built my life upon the lie that I was in control. I had to become humbly honest to let go of that, to begin to let go of that control. That's what step 7 says. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. As I said before, humility is absolute honesty. It takes absolute honesty. And I think that without it, you're not going to get through the whole process of sobriety.
John, we start each week with you guys saying, "Hi, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, I'm Tom, and I'm an alcoholic." This term honesty, absolute honesty, and humble honesty, you told me earlier, that's the first thing that you guys say in your meetings, right? I would imagine in this process, that one phrase takes on not a completely different meaning, but it takes on an expanded meaning as you go through this process, because you may say it, some people may say it in the first meeting because they don't want to be there, and they're just saying it just to say it. Versus now in where we are in this process, step 6 and 7, asking for grace, that phrase takes on a whole larger meaning because you are being honest with yourself. Is that right? Is that what you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a building process. It starts out with admitting it, and then, you learn to accept certain levels of it till you go in front of your God, your higher power, and you say, this is me. It's very honest. It's very open. It's difficult, and that's why I think those steps are so difficult. To building up to that is, yeah.
Tom, how about you? These 2 steps in this process, that one phrase, was it when you were saying, when you were going through the process and are going through the process, I'm sure now, yes, you're been sober for 40 years, happy anniversary. But going through this process in step 6 and 7, just saying that phrase probably was a lot more important and impactful to you versus when you first walked in and were just starting step 1. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I first walked in and first started step 1, I don't want to be here. I hate you people. I'm not ready to stop drinking. I haven't drunk my way through the wine fields of France yet. That's the way I was. And so by the time I get to this point, there's a huge change from taking step 1 and really taking step 1 to taking step 6 and 7, to becoming honest with yourself and with others.
The last part that we'll talk about is these 2 steps with giving God control, humble honesty, absolute honesty, not living a lie. It's all wrapped up into starting to receive and accept grace and starting to receive God into your life. Is that in this process, is that kind of where you started to see that? You started to accept grace?
That's where I didn't understand the concept of grace at that time, but that's where it starts. That's where you can truly say, I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. Because when we accept God's forgiveness, that's God's grace. That's God's greatest gift for us through his son, Jesus Christ. And when we accept that, everything changes. That's a game changer.
John, how about you? Like going through this process, like we said last week and the week before, you started this here in this building, in this church. These 2 steps, like Tom just said, it's a starting process of receiving grace. Is that same process? Is that the same thing for you in the process that you've been going through?
I didn't understand grace at all. I mean, I've been, it was a foreign concept to me. And it's it grows. It's an ongoing process for me. It grows all the time. The way I pray has changed over the last 2 years. It used to be, you know, I talk to God now. You know, the relationship has changed. It's, you know, He's my guide. He's my direction. You know, so much more than it ever was before. I didn't understand that whole concept of grace, and I'm still learning. It's such a, you know, every day that I learn a little bit more, it just makes me I'm so much better person and so much happier. So, you know, like I said before, I'm grateful every day, you know, and that's something that never happened before. You know, I'm grateful for being alive.
That's a common phrase that you guys just ended with, grateful. That's where, and you guys both just said it, right? This is the process. This is the time where you almost become, where you realize you become grateful for what you have. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. And with God in control, and God has the keys to the car. And hearing this, it's because, like I said, it's stuff that all of us have to go through, right? We always hear God is in control. Okay, it's for a lot of us, for all of us, it's hard to believe that from time to time in anything that we're going through. And these are the type of things that I love to hear is that how you guys experienced that and went from you being the driver's seat, God's not even in the car, to where this is the process, step 6 and 7, the pulling weeds, where you're handing over the keys to God and saying, let's go. Right?
Great.
Thank you, guys. This has been enlightening, and next week, you're not going to want to miss next week. I promise.
I want to share something with John.
Mm-hmm.
John, I remember being where you are. But I hear something from you that wasn't in me, and that's humility. I was still struggling with control. And I think it's so important that you have that humility now, because it's going to be the foundation of your continued recovery and your successful recovery. And when I mean that, I mean you are going to change, your life is going to change in so many ways, all positive. Eventually, there may be some difficulties now. There will always go through difficulties in our life. But because of your humility, you're on the right road.
I always, like when I was growing up, I gravitated towards certain things. And I always thought that humility and wisdom were things that you aspired for towards, you know, as you get older. And, you know, I realized something the other day. I wrote something down that says, age without wisdom is just getting old. You know, and, you know, I am very thankful and grateful that I have. Over the last few years, I've learned a lot, you know, and and I can't say enough about that. It's, you know, I wake up in the morning and it's like there's something that's happened in my life that's just, I never expected. And they say that, you know, the meetings say that, you know, by the time you're halfway there, you'll be amazed. And, you know, when I first went to the first few meetings, I'm like, yeah, whatever. This is miserable. This sucks.
Yeah.
But you know,
It ain't for me.
You mentioned it. It's like, I hate you all. I don't want to be here. I don't belong to be here. But by the time I actually walked into that room, I knew that I needed to be there. I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
I didn't want to admit to anybody that I was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then through the process, you learn to admit to everybody that you're wrong. And that's an important thing. You know, to me, you know.
That's got to be so just in regular life, I mean, that's got to be so hard to admitting to everybody that you're wrong with family, friends, and all of that. I mean, that's just listening to your stories and just how it's basically it's just you're dropping every ounce of pride, and you're also dropping every ounce of
Oh, it's still there. It rears its ugly head.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know, it's an evil little creature that lives inside of you, you know, and you know, it comes about when you least expect it.
Yeah.
You know, that prideful guy that lives inside. And you know, they talk about that. You gotta throw away the old. You gotta throw away, you know, people, places, and things they say in the meetings. You know,
and I'm sure it's not all rote. It's not all like it's not just an end all when you know when you admit to friends and family and such. It's not, oh, all's forgiven, all's good. It's a,
what do you do now?
yeah.
That was the thing. It's like, well, what do you do when you get to this place? It's like,
Right.
Well, now there's this other part called life. You got to learn how to live sober again. And that was very difficult transition.
It's almost like hitting in which we'll get in that. It's almost like it's like you're hitting a reset button, in a way.
I appreciate you though that you said that because you know it's something that's very important to me. How people perceive me in life. You know, you should say that doesn't make a difference, but it does. You know, how I treat people is really, really that important. You know, because you got to catch yourself every day. You know, how am I reacting with the world?
Yep.
And
You come across as a person coming from the heart. You really do.